So we're going to jump in and do a whole panel right now about sustainability. I'm really excited to moderate with these great speakers, which I'm just going to let them, with their expertise, lead into that. But Juliane and Ambriel, maybe we can get you two to introduce yourselves for those who might have not been online earlier. Just a brief description, and then we can jump right into our conversation.
Ambriel?
Oh, thank you, Julian. I am here today with you wonderful women at Women of the Future, and I want to extend my thank you to you for having me join the stage. With that being said, I work at Intertrust as the global head of Web3 luxury innovations and partnerships, and I really, truly enjoy my role there. And I love talking about circularity and sustainability and how we can create a better future for everyone. And Julian, pass the mic to you.
Thank you. And again, wonderful to be back here. I enjoyed all the talks. It's such a great initiative. Thanks again for Anne-Marie to getting us all together and your team, obviously. So my name is Juliane. I'm calling in from Munich, Germany. I'm researching the future of fashion. And I founded the Responsive Fashion Institute in 2019 when I came back to Munich after doing lots of research in London, because there was no space here for sustainability, technical innovation, and fashion. So the whole idea of creating systems rather than changing old systems. It's my thing, and big focus on sustainability. I did some work in Ethiopia with Ethiopian partners. So it's I'd love the digital because it's easy to connect like today.
Perfect. Well, I think everyone's got a really great and diverse background, so we'll jump right in. So I'm just going to start throwing out questions. I'll lead into them, but if someone wants to jump in, just let me know. So for this panel and with this group of women, what are you most excited to discuss about fashion, sustainability, and technology? Or what are the first words that jump into your mind when you hear those three words together? Maybe we'll start with you, Hena.
For me, it's the human value. So I feel like, the Bangladesh event where the entire building collapsed, right? The child labor, the Uyghur China province issues. So, there is so much of child labor, and, we are trying to sell, like, how can I get a $5 very fashionable clothes out there, right? That is our aim. So, I think we have to change our mindset and see, can we live in harmony on Earth, on Mother Earth, with everybody having an opportunity to fair trade, live in harmony? It's not just about clothes, it is about human values added or sewed into the production of that wonderful clothes.
Perfect. Ambriel?
Sure. For me, it's human compatible AI. How do we use AI for good? And I think that we have a very big opportunity when we think about sustainability to utilize AI, to utilize data that's collected from IoT sensors in a way to kind of improve the supply chain management processes so that we can ensure that we are creating that value that Hena just spoke about, that human value, and that we are putting the proper measures in place to protect life. 50 million people live in modern slavery globally, and that's a very big number when we think about how many people work in the textile industry, and that forced labor is very much so a problem that's coming out of the textile industry, but it also leads into the other issue we have, which is textile waste. So any way that we can use in AI and machine learning to reduce the amount of waste and to reduce the issues that we're having with modern slavery is really optimal to me.
And Juliane?
Yes, I couldn't agree more with Ambriel and Hena. And what I think is really necessary is the legislation coming in. And I think that's really exciting what's happening from the European perspective. I really enjoyed the impact of Lisa Lang early on today, and like how it's really necessary to create the framework and to create incentives, monetary incentives for company to change the system. And also loads of fashion companies are family owned, it's privately owned, and it's decisions that can be made. And also what I find more and more with the research and the education work that we do is also the holistic approach, because we're so often in our bubble. And for us, it's maybe easy to spend like $40 on a sustainable t-shirt, but how to really make make this fashion system democratic. I mean, how about people that can't afford that? So I think we really have to get out of this privileged research bubble and really look at a holistic approach to what is really working and what makes sense. And I think I couldn't agree more with you, Ambriel, with the technical solutions to really enforce those necessary changes in data. And the data isn't there, so I think it's really important. It's like a ground zero where you can really clean up your act and really get your data, find out that it's, I mean, you probably know it's not very good, but then you can improve it if you know what's wrong.
Well, one of the interesting things that one of the speakers was talking about earlier is how H&M is changing from a clothing company into a data company, because they've been collecting that for so many years. So that's a really interesting company that can give us a lot of insights. Yes and no, who knows, because they have a lot of fast fashion. So I'm not sure what sort of data that they're collecting. But let's delve into this. I know, Ambriel, like you had set the question that we were talking about, to what extent does the fashion industry perpetuate modern slavery? So what role do technology do you think it can play? Like, what technologies would you like to see that you think are actually making a difference? Is digital fashion great? Or, you know, the fact that we're becoming more aware of it, and it's really different in different parts of the world. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about what technologies you would like to see used, and how quickly, and do you think that they'll actually make that big of a difference? Ambriel, I'll throw that one to you.
Sure, Anne-Marie. It's we usher in the Web3 ecosystem, and we get more involved, and we see all these great technologies that are enabled through Web3, and we have blockchain, and we have the access to create and govern supply chain management by having an immutable record that sits on the blockchain. We have this ledger that we can always reference. It gives us so many insights. So if we could just get a supply chain management process in place where we have mass adoption of blockchain technology, and then we also have the usage of the IoT sensors that can even give us data from the amount of water that a crop is using, that a farmer is using to actually produce textile. And then we're able to connect that to the data that we need to be able to extract, to kind of understand also consumer behaviors, right? So now we're moving towards, you know, how do we understand consumer behavior so we can drive circularity? And the more we understand about consumer behaviors, the more circularity we can start creating. Because when we think about the fact, the impact of that, even in over the last 20 years, we've increased so much of the consumption in our society. I think it's.
Did we lose Ambriel?
I think she froze for a moment there.
But I think, to her point, like the mass adoption is very important, like a uniform standard globally, right? Because we are talking about across the continent, like how can we make sure it's a collaborative effort? Ambriel, go ahead. I was just covering for you. Okay, so I think she's on mute. Yeah, so
can you hear me? I think I had a technical issue. Okay, sorry about that. I think that, you know, with us buying over $80 billion worth of new pieces of clothing every year, we have this great opportunity if we can just start doing a mass adoption of the circularity to reduce the waste, and to also reduce modern slavery, which also reduces the amount of waste that's in the landfill. So we have all these opportunities to do this, and the creator economy, decentralization, is giving us a lens into this world. So I think we're very fortunate to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, if I can talk about one technology which can really make an impact when you talk about circularity, I think it is the digitalization and the digital tags, which can really make an impact, because that digital tags will give you like the end-to-end traceability and the material information, which is very much needed, like the absolute must to for circularity. And if that data can follow an international standard, data standard, then it will be like a very collaborative effort, and which can be like in 5 years, the entire globe can adopt it. You know, I know 5 years is long. We need to act even more faster, but still, you know, I'm just optimistically I think, you know, adopt globally.
And Juliane, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I just want to make a point what you mentioned about H&M, because I talked about that in the presentation. It's they have a lot of data about us, the consumers, but they don't have much data from the supply chain because it was a business model to outsource that. And maybe they started because what's looming from the European level, but I don't think they know much about, or they don't have much of that data. So it's just on one end, and they collect the data to maximize their sales, so to really understand the consumer and when to send us certain ads and things like that. So, but I think in terms of sustainability, I think I again couldn't agree more what the two of you, Hena and Ambriel, just pointed out. But I think also it's important to have an holistic approach about it as well. And I don't think not everything needs to be on a blockchain, and not everything needs to be applied with Web3, because I think it's a great tool set, and it's really great to enable those transparent systems. But I think not everything needs to be mined, not everything needs to be centralized. So in the end, it's about trust. And I think that trust has completely been lost within the system and within the industry. And I think all the stakeholders really need to decide what they want to do, how they want to act, because the consumers want more sustainable things, if they can afford it or not, but they like the sustainable idea, most of them. And I think it's really fantastic to really see the opportunity, like we can create the system, we can co-create the system and really use technology in order to make this trust more liable, so to say, if that's not a contradiction. But I think it's really, we have to be wary, like what's the offsets of mining everything, what's the offset of blockchain technology. And I know it's getting better and we're in the beginning, but I think it's just really important to point out that we should be wary about the side effects as well. And then we have to decide, is this worth using that technology? And I think, again, so much hasn't been developed yet that we're going to see in the future, because I know from conversations with like industry players who do track and trace services, a mass adoption is really difficult yet, because it's about a certain time frame. You have to scan things in order to get it out on an industrial scale. Things like that. I think so much will be developed in that sense, but definitely, I think the mindset is there now, and I'm really happy that this whole sustainability topics enter the mainstream now, finally.
Those are great points, Julian. So I just wanted to follow up on two of the points. One is data, and the other one is on blockchain. So if you're talking about blockchain, you're absolutely right. Not everything needs to be on blockchain. And also, right now, we have to make sure the blockchains we're adopting are those green, are those sustainable blockchains, right? We don't want to become, again, a carbon intensive process should be added. So there are blockchains like GoChain or Polygon, etc., which are green. And also on the data, the H&M is collecting. So that is also very important, because we are talking about regenerative AI. So it's basically based on how do you the value of that model is based on the value of the data, which is just trained upon, right? So unless we have collected that much of trustable data, relevant data, which can train that model correctly, that is the beauty of that model. It depends on the data. So I think H&M, collecting those data is a great step towards that.
Yes, and Julian, one of the points that you made, and I agree with Hena as well, everything doesn't need to be on the blockchain, but another good point is the trust in the data. And I think that, we need to really understand data governance, because we are collecting this personal data on consumer behavior, and we have to also be accountable for how that data is being used. So I think brands will have to have some type of governance and follow regulations to ensure that the data is ethical and that the data that is being collected is truthful, right? So a lot of the data that we know that we currently have access to is very sketchy. We have no idea if the data really has any truth behind it, or if the supply chain players, because we have so many actors, right? We have subcontractors, we have all these multi-layers within the fashion industry. We just have no idea how the data is being compiled and if the data we're receiving is adequate. So I think your point is very true. We need trust, and that is where we need to start. And then from everything, the technology we use and everything is built upon that trust. So very good points.
I think that's great. And touching on the trust, let's talk a little bit about ethics and talk about, you know, who's responsible for that? Is it the brands? Is it the suppliers? Where, you know, I mean, in Europe, it's a lot different of mandates that are going on, as Lisa was mentioning earlier, and what's going on in different parts of the world. What are your views of what challenges the industry is facing in terms of ethics, and who's responsible for those?
I think definitely there should be a responsible authority like Europe is doing, right? They have the product footprint, which is mandatory, which they're making it mandatory. So things like that, even if you're looking at US, like California has a lot of mandatory regulations. So they are ahead, and that is the model which we all have to have. There should be some authority which are regulating, and there should be but the onus should lie on the supplier and each player of that supply chain. So there are certifiers like fair trade or GOTS or recycling standards, etc. WARP. So we need to make sure those certifiers or the authorities are also watching or certifying the suppliers. There should be standard framework which should certify these data of each of the suppliers.
I think follow the money, give monetary incentives to
Beautiful.
Develop new materials, to get rid of your waste yourself, don't ship it around the world, close those loopholes and follow the money. Give tax incentives, tax saving incentives for companies to be better, and you will see how quickly they will react. It's very simple.
Totally.
And
yeah.
don't get it watered down through lobbyists in Europe, in America, wherever,
Beautiful.
And
I completely agree with both of you. I think following the money is key because, if we create grant programs and various programming so that people have access to implement the structure that's necessary to make themselves, their factories accountable, to make everyone accountable, then the more of a better society we build. So I completely agree with following the money. I also believe that we're all responsible. I mean, we're responsible for educating ourselves, but we're as consumers, but we're also responsible as professionals in the industry to do the educating, right? So in being in summits as we are in today and being involved and, making sure that we're paying attention to when the European Commission comes out with new standards and what those standards truly mean and how those standards are being implemented in different parts of the world and what it means for our global economy and what it means for our waste management, throughout the world, not just in the textile industry, but more collectively. So I think that there's a lot of ways for us to be very key players in the evolution of how this data is being managed and in making sure that we're educating people about what they're doing to help themselves. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do here.
So let's touch on education, because that was my next question. You're so good at leading in; it's wonderful. So I've got a 12-year-old son, and he would much rather have digital assets and digital clothes for his avatars than he would regular things. And it's funny because when I was that age, young girl, preteen, I wanted the latest pants and the latest shoes and the latest thing. And I wanted to have stuff. Like I really wanted stuff. And that was in the 80s and early 90s because I'm 46. So how, looking at our youth and educating them, they know a lot more than we did. But what do we need to do to make sure they actually truly understand sustainability and fashion and what choices they can make? And leading that back into the conversation about emerging tech with their avatars and what have you, how do you see that going, and where do you see those changes happening immediately and then down the road? Juliane?
I feel like go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I have two teenage kids at home, so I'm in a similar situation. So our son was 17 by now, who used to play Fortnite for some time. I asked him when there was this Travis Scott concert in Fortnite and millions tuned in, and I asked him, so who were you today? What kind of skin did you have? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, were you a man or were you a woman? And he's like, well, it doesn't matter, just something that was fun. And I really thought that was really interesting, this gender fluidity. That's not a big issue,
Mhm.
at least not in the digital space. I mean, it's probably a different thing growing up as a man with everything else that's going on. But our daughter, who's 14, I mean, she really loved fast fashion, and it was really difficult for me. And I said, I just can't place those orders for you. My heart breaks. I can't do it. And but there's not much variety out there on a certain budget when the kids want to buy it for themselves. And coming back to access to, and it's democratization process as well. Can you have certain styles? Can you be part of that gang? And can you be part of that group? So it's I mean, fashion is such a wonderful thing, and of self-expression and all that. So how do you make that accessible? And that's the point from lots of Shein customers in Europe saying, well, it's just great, it's cheap, and I can be whoever I want, and I don't have to spend a lot of money on it.
Mhm.
Fair enough. I mean, we know the practices and everyone else knows it, but still, maybe the wish of presenting yourself in that way in your environment is bigger than the ethics in that sense. And coming back to what I said earlier, I think it's educating is key. And I saw it with our daughter now that she did a work project at school where she recreated a Shein top, which cost €5.99 and had a free delivery from China. And she recreated it and made it herself. And she used this cost calculation of the fashion revolution of this $29 t-shirt. I don't know if you've seen that. And she did this cost calculation. And this t-shirt, the self-made t-shirt, which is a copy of the Shein t-shirt, would have cost €6,000 in comparison. So was this example by the fashion revolution that it's 29 t-shirt which retails for €29 or dollars. How much goes to labor, how much goes to the fabric, the factory, how much goes to all of that. And so she did that calculation scheme. And no one in the world, I think someone really famous sign it would spend $6,000 on a t-shirt. So I mean, it's just showing the real cost of things. And she watched some documentaries, the true costs and everything. So I think that's helping, and also getting more influencers that have a really big impact in social media to really get them into this sustainable fashion environment. And things that happened with the influencers that went to the Shein factory and the whole backlash that came with it, I think that's really changing a lot, and we're going to see more of that coming in. That it's really about decisions at that vintage is getting more cool, and to maybe it's getting easier with access with rentals and things like that. But it's a cultural shift, and that takes time, and maybe it needs a generation or half a generation.
I couldn't agree more, Julian. And I think that there are two key things that we can turn to when we think about Generation Z and Generation Alpha, right? How do they enjoy learning? And what we're learning is they enjoy learning through gamification a lot. So if we can kind of recreate a gamification element to how we teach them about sustainability, and there are a couple of ways we can do that. Hena earlier talked about NFC tagging. And I believe that NFC tagging also allows us to create personalized experiences for consumers. So when someone is able to, see quickly as a teen that if I use near field communication, have my cell phone out and I'm able to scan my top or my hat or whatever it is, and then I can have a very quick rundown of how much of an environmental footprint I'm leaving behind by purchasing this item. It kind of gives me some accountability. And that's really early because it can be gamified, and it's all up to how the brands utilize the NFC capabilities when they are doing the tagging to create this back end story of how they're developing sustainable practices within their supply chain. So I think that we have that as an element to really look forward to. And I think also what's going to really help us with this group and young people when we think about it is the virtual try-on environments. As we have more and more opportunity to do virtual try-ons and we become more invested in digital fashion, digital fashion, right, allows us to travel through the metaverse and have experiences we never had and wear anything that we want to wear. So I think it's really us, again, as adults, educating the children and letting them know you're only going to wear this for one day. So why not use it on your avatar, right? Or you only need to experience it for a short amount of time. Or do you really want those specific shoes? Let's do a virtual try on before we even have it shipped to our house. Oh, now you see that it doesn't go with the other items in your closet. So now we don't have to worry about it being returned. Returns is another issue because once something's returned, as we know, it adds to the amount of textile waste that ends up in landfills. So I think that, having those conversations and really opening the gates as to how can we help educate people the best way possible. And it's also accessibility, because when we talk about virtual try-ons, we talk about the metaverse, and we talk about gamification and NFC tagging, we have to also be very understanding of we live in a globalized world, and not every community has access to the technology to enable these things. So it's really going to be based upon, where we're standing with that particular cultural norms of that group that we're talking to, that community, and making sure that we do everything to give them the best way to assess the information to create these educational cycles for us.
Brilliant idea, Ambriel. I love the gamification of the carbon footprint. If you can have a very interesting game, and who can have the least carbon footprint for that week, and they get rewarded, and influencers are promoting that. That could be a great initiative among teens and Gen Zs.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we did a digital treasure hunt in Munich. It was supported by the city of Munich. So we used Instagram because we didn't want to use an extra app to lose users. So it was for students and pupils from the age of 14 with the data regulations in the EU from Instagram. And we planted some QR codes in the city, and we provided a map, and then we created some augmented reality filter where we visualized like we had in the main shopping street, we had the burning rainforest, and we supported it by research from there was a Guardian article, for example, that H&M and other fast fashion retailers are compliant with the deforestation of the rainforest and things like that. So, and then we made some incentives. We asked them to do stories, to tag it, and then send us, if they didn't want to do it public, they could send us DMs with those stories. And then we did they won some vouchers and some goodies, physical.
Love it, Julian. I think we need to promote it to many. Right now you mentioned City of Munich, right? So how can we promote it and do the similar?
Yeah, it's on Instagram. It was with an NGO, the Umweltakademie, Sustainable Academy, but it's on the Instagram of the Responsive Fashion Institute there, and it's in English as well. So the QR codes are not necessary. It's just filters, and we did it in English on purpose because we cooperated with the OR Foundation in Ghana with Liz Rickett, and we used some of the imagery to fill up the global fashion waste from Ghana on the main square in Munich. And
love it.
So we brought it in. And now what I want to say, we wanted to enter the space of the kids because I mean, there's so much knowledge out there, but it's like really talking to each other and reaching those channels, and we can't expect for them to come to panels and watch documentaries. I mean, we have to go into their levels, and I'm talking TikTok, which I feel a bit too old. So I can just do Instagram, and I'm just grasping Snapchat a little bit, but TikTok, I'm just too old for that. But there are other people that can do that. to really go to the platforms rather than expect everyone to come to your events and to your panels and things. Again, getting out of our bubble, because we all know a lot. We can connect, we can do things, but I mean, reaching people, we really have to get out there and create channels.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. So I'm going to ask this for each of you, but what would you love to see? What's your vision for sustainable fashion now and in 5 years? And how would you like to see changes made, and at what different levels? Hena, I'll start with you.
Sure. So in 5 years, so I would definitely want to see a circular supply chain. which is like, it's not like one brand doing the circular, right? I would love to see a globally accepted standard which is followed for that circular supply chain, and it's adopted by major players. So that is what I would love to see. And definitely with that, when I say that circular supply chain, I would love to see the more digitalization, and as Julian was mentioning, more of the metaverse digital fashion usage. So that is what I would envision. And this optimization of supply chain with the AI is also a key element in optimizing the inventory and the carbon footprint management as
well. Awesome. And Ambriel, you?
Sure. I would like to see us continue to leverage technologies that we're using today, like 3D printing, to really drive that circularity that Hena is describing, and to really get people involved in understanding that there are other processes that we can use to manufacture goods. And I think that if we start doing that and people start seeing the real utility in technologies that are instituted through 3D printing and AI and also the blockchain, that we're going to have an opportunity to really transform the way that we are currently utilizing and thinking about sustainability practices. I think in addition to that is always, I'm going to go back to data collection and having accessibility to the data for us to really make informed decisions on how we're driving the sustainability models within our own brands, within our own lives, and just globally it's a culture. So I think that there are lots of different ways that this can be done. But for me, in the next 5 years, those are really important factors.
Great. And Juliane?
Well, within 5 years, I would have loved to see bold decisions by decision makers and big companies and owners of big companies. And I wish for a less number of consumption, because I think it's just too much production and consumption. I hope that the whole issue of circularity consumption or circular consumption will be more adapted culturally, but I think it will be. And I really hope that we can find the best solution to stop women being exploited on such a level.
Women and children.
Women and children, yes.
Modern slavery.
Or humans being exploited, and fashion is such a wonderful thing. And I wish, coming to the next talk, I would love to see some couture in space.
You're just leading right into caveat. She's smiling in the backstage here.
Sustainable, biodegradable, regenerative couture space. And I would love to see some fashion that is healing and supporting, and an amazing experience to be physical and digital, and exciting times. So
that's awesome. So I have one quick question for the rest of you, and then we will visit fashion in space in just a minute. Do you all have a favorite example of sustainable fashion that you love right now, or a company that's working on something that you think is exciting down the road? I'd love to just hear what your thoughts are on that.
Country roads in Australia. So especially their programs to support the farmers and to improve the biodiversity in the environment. So they have various programs for that. So I felt it was very unique, and very much, they're embracing their culture, diversity, the heritage, and the biodiversity.
Awesome.
I think that luxury fashion designers, when they embrace any aspect of sustainability, I get really excited, because I believe that they're drivers of everything that happens. They're the reason fast fashion is produced a lot of times. It's because this whole idea we need to replicate what's on those runways that the luxury designers put out. And so when I see big movements like with the recent one with the Barbie core fashion trend, and I see designers like Bauman create handbags out of PET bottles that makes me really excited, because I know that there it's a collective. The design house understands that there's a necessity to do something, and even though they still have goods that are manufactured with leather and hard metals that are not recyclable, I think just making those types of movements. When I know that the Apple Watch has come out with a new Apple Watch that's a wearable technology item that's manufactured out of recycled materials, that type of thing gets me really excited, because those are mass consumption types of ideologies that really are going to drive the future of sustainability, I believe.
That's great.
Yeah, and I just really love the presentation of this digital outfit from the Institute of Digital Fashion at the last Oscars, because it was a perfect merge of augmented reality and a sustainable fabric. It was a great collaboration. It was an upcoming actress wearing it, and it was also a first time this digital fashion idea entered the mainstream on such an international, vast platform like the Oscars. So that was, I think, really exciting.
That's awesome. And we just have one final question from the audience. Are the fast fashion companies truly living up to their promises and addressing the issues to face the industry, or are they just paying lip service to it? Thank you, Sue, for that question.
Number two.
Number two.
Yes.
They're like, no comment.
Well, let's put that way, they could be trying harder.
Yeah, let's end on a positive note, saying, we all can do better.
Yes,
I would say that as well. And I'm not sure they have the infrastructure development yet or access to it across the board to implement all the strategies they aspire to implement. So I would say that we're just going to keep improving and educating and moving the story forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. This was such a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate all of you. Ambriel, we'll see you in a little bit for your talk. But now we're going to throw over to Dr. Kavya, who is talking about fashion in
Going
space.
to space. Thank you.
So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Bye.